feel like Shakira, or is that a current pop star with this on? It's a bit strange, and it's pink. Okay, hello, and thank you all for coming for this weekend. It's been really good to see everyone here, and a good mix of people, and quite a good attendance. So after doing conferences in this area for a few years, it's nice to do one a bit further south. There's a lot up north usually, so it's nice to come down to Crop Circle Land and do one. Miles essentially asked me to do one redoing the Falklands stuff and this thing about this intelligent nano oil, or as he coined the phrase when we did the Amash thing, he called it the black goo, which seems to have spread everywhere over the internet. So essentially we're going to look into that and terraforming, and essentially the whole issue, the problem that I've got is, of course, that some people will know about that and may have watched the videos, and some people won't have done. So, because it's a very involved thing, the whole Falklands thing is quite an involved story, all with the contact and the stuff with Marconi, the scientist desk that many of you will know about. It's quite a big area, so my issue was, if we wanted to add something a bit different, and some other stuff that we found out recently, how much do I do on that, and how much do I lose people if I don't do that? So what I'm going to do is skim through what I think is the bare bones of the Falklands, the Marconi desk, and just do a bare bones discussion of that. Some slides from the last talk that we did on that, the one I did with Amash and elsewhere, and hopefully if you don't know much about that, you'll get just enough to understand it. Hopefully if I explain it fairly well, and then we can perhaps cover some areas around the outside. But in the meantime, just before we start that, if we can get this right, okay. What I wanted to show you was we had a lot of confusion because of the weather over the CE5 skywatch. The whole idea with CE5 that you can interact and bring UFOs closer to you and have interaction with them. And that's, of course, in crop circle land, that's a really big thing anyway. There's UFOs, balls of light that travel over crop circles. I'm from the north. I live in what's called UFO Alley up in Hebden Bridge, and we have a lot of activity up there, and we've been doing for years trying to attract these craft and having some significant success with that. So we had no idea what we do down here. So because of the weather, a bit of miscommunication last night. We did end up going last night just because there was a break in the weather. Most people had gone, they were knackered, most people had gone, but we had about 8 of us, I think, up there. So I was shocked, so I'll just show you the results of what we actually got when we went up there. This is with just a basic focused meditation, just with a symbol in your head, and this is all we did. So this is the first. This is just a 2-minute clip of when we first went up. But this is what normally happens. So you end up going up to the designed area, wherever you are, Pennines, down here, Crop Circle Land, somewhere that's a bit known for strange energies, and do some sort of meditation, just think along certain lines, quieten your mind down a little bit, and usually they'll try and attract your attention, but it will be from a distance, and it's always distance with these objects, because usually what they're doing is checking out your fear and your consciousness, and they won't come closer. Well, last night was dramatic in that, because they made their mind up very fast. So literally, as soon as we got to the top of the hill, and this was a long walk to the top of Knap Hill we went to, bear in mind this is really rough cut video. This is through night vision. We've got it also on full HD film, but we've had no time to put all this together because obviously it was last night. So it's very rough and ready, but this is the first video. I've got to check the sound here. Takes its time. I can't see it. Right, so you've got you'll see, and again,
the clouds come over now. Hang on. Okay. Right, there we go.
3.
Right, here we go.
Attracting attention in the distance.
It's stunning. That's a lovely display. Thank you for that. Who wants to look? This is undoubtedly, this is not playing, this is ET. Who wants to, but we're recording. Yeah, just keep recording.
So, I'm afraid, and in the next one, you've got my voice gobbing off because I'm near the microphone, so you have to excuse me talking to these objects and talking to the people around me. You won't hear them because they're not here.
Yeah, okay.
I think that was someone else who just had it was going to have a look on the night vision. Then what we did, you haven't seen anything yet. Then what we did, we then moved to a separate part to overlook the east field, and we had some stunning incidents. And again, it's not so much looking at these lights. I want you to get the idea that the interaction's taking place, because we've proved this beyond doubt. This isn't the idea that they just happen to be in the area. You know, these things respond to you. Let's just hope this loads a bit faster, because this one's even a longer video, so let's try it. Here we go. Okay, so within about, 15 minutes, they've now decided. You can see how close they've come if you listen to the audio. The date's wrong there, so the camera battery died, so we have to replace it.
That looks like the sun.
If you listen to this discussion, you'll hear us talk about when we're doing this meditation, a quick one, and when they respond.
you know, and that's a definite response to us, because we said it'll come back again, and it does. I'm trying to get you two in on this so I can get some perspective. Just stay there a minute. Okay, should we ask again?
So we just said we're going to do it again. So you can now time it. You'll count it on your hands before they reappear. There's no lights on now. Someone's got it. I haven't got it on camera yet. So there's another one come up. There we go.
Wow,
again.
Beautiful.
No, that there is the horizon. So that's it's quite a nearby horizon. This is sky.
Wow.
So this is not car headlights or anything else like that.
Okay.
It's interesting now if you watch it die out. You know, this is.
Played nicely again, isn't it?
And this isn't the closest one we
Where's
had.
the other one? Which, can you tell me left or right, please? Left or right?
They then started appearing behind us and on the right. The left.
It's moving.
Right. There we go. Fading out. And these could all be seen with the naked eye. This is just an image intensifier. It's not even night vision. It's an image intensifier program.
Okay, so have you got it?
Okay, then we start looking for the other ones. They're coming around the different side. I don't know the area, but there's Eastfield and Mill Hill somewhere else. So we were just checking where else they were coming from. And then the best one is yet to come. That we then do another. We do another focused sort of intent.
Can you laser pin where this other one is? Oh, I've got it. Oh,
no,
is it really?
That's not
it.
That's something else. Transformer or lighthouse or something.
Oh. Right. I mean, that was the most responsive craft in a long time. Object. So.
Okay, dark sky again.
For the
Notice.
skeptics, then there we go. We've just spoken about it, and here it comes again. We just mentioned it. Thank you again. A hugely responsive object.
Another one there. We have another one on the right that just misses.
Wowee. Thank you. One beneath it. We've got one below. Focusing in. Hang on. I'm going to try zoom.
Again, you need a tripod, but you can't react with a tripod. So we've learned all our lessons with this, but when you're out there sort of last minute, then you haven't quite got all the kit you need to have.
Thank you. I mean, that was amazingly. Yeah,
I know, these were big. These
were
big blow-ups of light. I mean, big. You know, it's difficult to tell distance, especially.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Especially when you don't know the area.
There we go. Yep, and out. Okay, let's put infrared on.
Okay. So I'm sorry if somebody, I know more, because about 25, 30 people emailed me, couples also, so there's probably about 30, 40 people who wanted to come to the Skywatch, and I'm sorry that if we, weather and waiting for it to get dark to know cloud levels, it was a bit difficult. So, we can always do this again sometime, and obviously down here is a far more active area than I realised. I didn't know, I wasn't expecting anything like this, but it was pretty good. So all I want to do is then tie that in. So the whole idea of C5 and the fact that all of us here can conjure these. This isn't any special talents that any of us had up there. This is something that you can all do. Everyone can do this if you've got the sort of the dedication and you've got a degree of belief, and belief in the right sort of way, not a belief in a dippy way, belief in the right sort of way about this stuff. Because it's a reality, and you can all do this. And there's an important reason why you should all be trying to do this, or finding your own way, whether it's crop circles or this stuff. And I'll try and relate this into this weird black goo stuff and what's happening, which might be a difficult tall order. But okay, so keeping on the time. So essentially, that was the headlines. If you're from the, if you're as old as me, you'll remember that headline probably, because that was when I think war was called. Down to the Falklands, and Thatcher booted everyone down to go and get the Falkland Islands back. So I'm just going to give you a background, not so much to the war but just to the incidents that what led to this strange substance being found. Okay. So. You've got the main. I've tried to break this down again for those that haven't or don't know much about it, or haven't encountered it at all. So you have what Miles calls the black goo, the term that's raced around the internet. The black goo. That's also the term that's actually used in a few very recent sci-fi programs and stuff. It's quite interesting. And this substance then interacts in several ways, both with the Falklands War, as we're about to see, down at the Antarctic, where there's a lot going on with this substance that they claim they're going down for other reasons, but I think a lot of this substance seems to be at the heart of it. You've got an absolutely amazing... The guy that I owe a lot to is Alec Newell from New Zealand, who essentially was jailed over this issue and many other issues, and had a lot of links with intelligence agencies and other stuff, and also has his own ET group, went to a planet for 10 days and learnt all this stuff, and they were dropping hints about this substance and saying it's a planetary threat, it's a threat to the species, and we're trying to deal with it, and you're going to be involved in trying to help us deal with this. And then up here, which I like, because it brings it back to the UK, because it was Marconi in the UK that actually appears to have dealt with this substance, that at the end of the Falklands War, special services, whoever, seemed to have nipped back to Marconi, and Marconi essentially were involved with, when you look into it in depth, were involved into sort of engineering and programming this oil. God knows how they did it, and God knows how you interface with an oil, but it seems to have been the case when you read some of the discussion on it and the quotes from some of the people that Alec knows. And then you have this spate of weird deaths that some of you will have heard about. This guy wrote a book on it in the early 90s, but he didn't make the link to anything to do with the Falklands. He thought it was all Star Wars defense, which was going on at the time, the SDI stuff with sort of Thatcher and Reagan. He put it down to that. And then you have this other culminating event, which basically tells you what's happening on a global level. This appears to be a true event to a certain degree as well. That in the Gulf of Mexico, there was a standoff between all these major nations over this issue, and it was linked to something to do with the Gulf oil crisis that happened. So let's see how much we can get through. So I said, despite this idea of the black goo and its travel around the internet, and it's this sort of, semi sort of sci-fi sort of phrase, it's when you look through all this and you go into it, the depth, especially that I've done, it sort of took over my life for 2 or 3 years. Then it does read like it's like a contactee detective story with all this stuff, intelligence agencies, aliens, mad deaths at sort of defense agencies, that spread out. It's like all the stuff with the financial people that are jumping off buildings at the moment, just mad shit. So you've got all this kicking off. But I don't want that to deflect from the point that the one thing, if I was going to reduce it, the one thing that it probably struck me after going through all this research, and now another 2 years later, having now spoken to a few more people about this, and had people come forward to me and tell me from Argentina, from a base in Scotland, just weird stuff that have just come forward and said that they've seen this stuff, and just telling me little bits of snippets. But overall, especially with this whole idea of the way the black goo has sort of gone round as a meme in our heads and has really picked up in culture, in films, is that I think that we've got a deep genetic memory of this. I think this stuff has happened on a planet that we've been on before, or on this planet. This stuff has terraformed, as you'll see, this intelligent stuff. We've interacted with it in some way. We've got a deep fear of it or a deep interest. It's probably both the same thing. But that's the one thing that struck me about this. And as regards this, I think that this substance may be related to something that's about to happen. This is what Alec Newell and a few other people that are on this closed sort of forum that have all been discussing this for sort of 3 or 4 years, that something's happening that's related to this substance. And when you look into all the stuff that's happened in culture, on film and stuff, then they've got a fixation with it as well, starting mostly with the X-Files. I don't think I've got time to play that. Let's just see if it plays. I don't know if it's going to be loud enough, because this sums it up, what they're saying. The whole X-Files was based on this.
No. Though I have no means to prove otherwise. The virus is extraterrestrial. We know very little about it, except that it was the original inhabitant of this planet.
A virus?
What is a virus but a colonizing force that cannot be defeated, living in a cave underground until it mutates and attacks?
This is what you've been conspiring to conceal? A disease?
No, for God's sake, you've got it all backwards. AIDS, the Ebola virus, on an evolutionary scale, they are newborns. This virus walked the planet long before the dinosaurs.
What do you mean, walked?
Your aliens, Agent Mulder, your little green men, arrived here millions of years ago. Those that didn't leave have been lying dormant underground since the last ice age in the form of an evolved pathogen, waiting to be reconstituted by the alien race when it comes to colonize the planet, using us as hosts. Against this we have no defense, nothing but a weak vaccine. Do you see why it was kept secret? Why even the best men like your father, could not let the truth be known? Until Dallas, we believed
All right, we'll leave that there. So, the X-Files, a hugely influential series from the 90s, and had this black, not this, but probably a black substance that strangely then parallels the stuff that we then find out from these ETs and from these various intelligence agencies that are all interlinking and arguing over this stuff, and these companies, especially in Europe and Russia, that were trying to get hold of this stuff to engineer it. This weird nano oil seems to then, that's got this kind of intelligence, and the whole idea of that frightens us. This whole idea of some sort of substance that then has got intelligence and can morph into things. It's the stuff of sci-fi, but it's bizarre to see that actually it probably, like many things in reality, it actually probably does exist. Okay, so yeah, quick history of the Falklands. You know where the Falklands are, down there, so we send our troops off. The important point to note is how close it is to Antarctica, and also, of course, it's bloody cold down there. And there's a reason why they chose that. Let's have a look. So down here, the top part of that sea, got the Falkland Islands here, and you've got the top part of that sea there we have. This is Thule Island, the top little bit of that. It's a really barren, freezing cold place. But essentially down there was where a lot of weird stuff happened with regards Argentina and Britain. The whole Falklands War started there in '76. That was one of the causes of the problem of the actual war in the first place, and it ended there. The very last battalion shipping fleet that Britain sent out was to that island, and there were reasons for that. Okay, that's 1976, that's when they established the base. That's the base that's on top of the island. Doesn't look much there. It is actually pretty big. What's interesting is, of course, there's some stuff that's happened since. So just to bear in mind, the whole idea was that both Argentina seemed to have links with these ETs, or that they basically asked Argentina if they could use this rock to do. How much they told them, we don't know, but that's the general gist, that the upper military in Argentina seemed to know about that. And this was confirmed sort of by me to this guy I've had long conversations with, who was in the Argentinian Air Force in the 70s. So this has happened since all this stuff came out. So he wrote, you will find some say that the actions of, these are my bits inside brackets, say that the actions to retake territory in the period you discussed, 76 to 82, was simply a response to renewed nationalism or a diversion from economic conditions. However, for most of that era, there seemed to be an unseen force or agenda leading the darkest sides to policy. This has been translated from. It was an at-all-costs approach. And as much as I can, with the help of some people, then I've had conversations with him, and it just seems there was another. When he describes desperation, he was like this at-all-cost thing. Then that period from around 76 to 82 had a different dimension to it. And you think, of course, well, what do the Americans do when they want to build Area 51? They do it. If they want to get hold of a downed UFO, they'll fly into another country and they'll take it. They've done that in many countries in Latin America, elsewhere. When it comes to the ET issue, when it comes to technology, weird technology that they can use, they will do anything. And it was that I was trying to get through to him, and that's what he seemed to reciprocate, that it was different. He'd been part of the forces for in the whole of the 70s, so he had a pretty good view of how they functioned. He's quite high ranking as well. He's retired now. So that gives you some idea that probably Argentina knew what was going on. Okay, so the point was that Alec Newell was told that there was a base already on the island. So the important part is that it was down there because the stuff seems to this oil substance seems to lie down deep in certain bedrocks, and there's certain places it's concentrated around the Earth. But these blue ETs, this is the group that Alec Newell were in touch with, use this region of Thule precisely because it was cold enough so they could safely do it. Because the moment this stuff apparently gets in touch with a high temperature or seawater, it starts to replicate and do all sorts of bizarre things, which you'll see if you go on yourself to read the Gulf of Mexico document. You'll see what happens supposedly to an international fleet there when they tried actually dealing with this stuff. So that's it. And the blues, it says here, there's significant links with the Argentine officials, and that seems to be the case. I've also put there that Britain was aware. We don't know that, but you can guess when you look into the patterns of how keen they were to take this rock. That's one guy I got to know down there. He's separate to the other guy I just mentioned. That's Alec Newell's book. He's done 2 editions of that. Very interesting if you want to get a copy of that if you haven't got it already. That's what the British did to the British commandos did to the base in the end. That's the top base. But again, this wasn't the base where this stuff, these ET groups were, and where apparently the British forces found and went in. There apparently was buried under rock on the other side to where they landed. This is the bits that I've picked up, which isn't still totally clear. I'm not clear on all this stuff. I don't know how you can be clear on something that's essentially is a covert operation and completely bizarre. So. Some stuff on freedom information crest, that bit was just interesting, and that's all I left in from the old talk, is that when I went, tried to get some documents on the Falklands, the one on Thule Island was the only one that they'd restricted. I think, I can't remember what it's for, was it 40 years? It's got a huge restriction on it, and you've got to say, well, why can you get all the other Falklands documents, freedom of information, but you can't get the one on the logistics and other stuff for Thule Island? I don't know. Won't ever find out unless it wants to break into the place. So what happens, as I said earlier, the stuff apparently was then taken super speedily back to Marconi, who I presume at that time were perhaps still a leading company. Well, they were, in that they're still starting to do satellites and other stuff. I've looked into the whole Marconi history. So obviously Britain got there first with this, and Britain gave this to Marconi, and Marconi started interfacing this stuff. They found out that it started to affect weather satellites. Lots of other things went on. But the biggest indicator, seems to be what happened. And the coincidence is just too much. Is that, of course, you then have, and this was reported gradually at the time, hence there's not many British newspapers, but you start seeing all these deaths that happen. And these deaths, as you know, if you've seen the talk where I go into it in detail, these deaths aren't just a quick murder. These deaths are bizarre. These deaths are the weirdest. They're either warnings from the intelligence services or the military, or something else was going on. And the weird alien aspect of this substance, this oil, this goo, seems to almost manifest in the way that they're killed and what happens to them. I don't know. It could be a mixture of both, but I think that sort of thing can happen. This thing's got sort of a field around it, and so it starts affecting those who start trying to deal with it. Especially, essentially it's a stolen alien item. They got this from the base where the Blue ETs were trying to do us a favour by de-engineering this stuff, because it's a planetary danger. I should just say that apparently this substance was originally left on the planet by a rogue group of ETs who planted it there, must have let it nano form itself, and the idea was that then if they lost a battle on Earth, or they got booted off the Earth that they were trying to inhabit, they could go out to space and then trigger it using frequency, whatever, and it would then terraform the planet. So whoever had taken the planet off them wouldn't have it either, because the planet would be terraformed. That's what Alec Neword was told. Hence the danger, obviously, then involved in trying to deal with this. But human arrogance knows no bounds, as we know. So, bizarre Marconi deaths. I mean, I can't go into all these. Go and have a look on my website. All this stuff's there. Or watch one of the videos, or buy the book, because he goes into all these in details. Electrocution, asphyxiation, death leap. One guy happened to tie a rope round his neck. He tied the other one to a lamppost, threaded it through his car window, and put his foot on the accelerator to pull his own head off. I mean, that's some suicide. That really is. That's some suicide. There are far better ways to do that. If you want your wife to find you, I don't think most of us are thinking of doing that sort of thing. So this is Victor Moore, is an intriguing character in here, and was actually part of the South African intelligence service. But he was allowed to do. I mean, he was down in Antarctica. Got to know Alec Neword in prison. And the interesting thing that I picked up from Alec was the stuff that he said about what was going on in Marconi. He's the guy that basically said it's Marconi. I think he was one of the main links for this. So he's the guy from South Africa. Right, so yeah, that's right. I said a lot of this has been a couple of years ago. He knew one of the Marconi guys as he studied. So the South African guy studied in the UK with him before. This was Victor Moore, who's quite famous when you look into this whole area of computing. He's really a big guy. I've looked into most of these people's backgrounds. He was the one that noticed when the oil got switched on, they started to get interference with the weather satellites. Then this one again down here. These are important because it tells you what they would. It's a little glimpse into the world of Marconi and what they would, the weirdity they were dealing with. This friend let slip one day about a new robotic fluid their computer engineer guys were working on that could be programmed with radio frequencies. They thought they might be able to use it hydraulically, which would open up all kinds of new design fields. When he asked around, nobody knew who invented it or where it might have come from, nor even any talk of patents to buy from another company. I mean, that sort of reminds you of the whole Roswell thing, where they sort of try and seed things, but they do it cleverly into areas that are already established. So you get all the debunkers with alien technology who go, well, you know, man could have invented the laser. Man, yeah, and probably. But if you're clever, you know, Corso and all that, they seeded the technology where it's already partially been researched, so it's slipped in quite nicely. The ETs are also quite good at delivering technology to us that's sort of just about right for where we are on a development. That seems to be a familiar pattern. But I think this stuff was outside of all that. Hence what happened. It couldn't be slipped in to a company because it was too alien. Marconi's yes, that's the guy's written the book on it. You can buy that if you want to. I spoke to him, Tony Collins. But again, he's doesn't want to touch anything like this probably quite rightly. I'll just do this. We'll finish on Marconi here. I thought this was an interesting quote. He also, this is Victor Moore, I think, talking again. I have to get this right. He also thought something about the job had really been bugging his friend, but he would not talk about it openly, of course. He did say, however, that he was working on something out of his field, indeed, out of everyone's field at Marconi. He didn't feel he was up to it or comfortable with it. He even let slip with it was a little spooky what this stuff could do, even reaching into the fields of medicine biology and nanotechnology. And again, this is a guy that this is the guy that tried to leave his job at Marconi, and they wouldn't have it. I think he was so instrumental in what was going on, it freaked him out, and he wanted to leave, and so they topped him as well. So you know, that just gives you a glimpse into Marconi. I'll skip if I haven't got any more. So, try to sum up, as well as the Marconi stuff, also the contacts that Alec Newell had with these ETs, the stuff that's happened in Antarctica, the other stuff that we'll probably find out about the Gulf of Mexico quickly in a minute. What do we know about this? And again, a lot of this is sort of conjecture. We don't know for good. You know, we don't know anyone that's actually dealt with this. All these people, they're either tight-lipped or they're dead. You know, that's you don't get much further than that. So it stays dormant under pressure, as we said. That's why the ETs are down in this Thule Island, because it needs to be kept in this ice cold. It's a safe environment down there. Concentrate in several regions around the planet, reacts to warmth, catalyzed by seawater, which makes sense in a minute when we see the Gulf of Mexico. It morphs. Well, that's basically just nanotechnology. If you program nanotech, you have to define parameters for it, as far as I understand. And the moment, if you make some sort of screw up in the programming of nanotechnology, it can replicate in a huge way in a very short amount of time, because that's what they're essentially, it's replication engines. That's what most of them are. So obviously, you know, got to be very careful with that. Don't forget, we were doing all this in the 80s. This is where we're trying to deal with what we now know is an artificially intelligent nanosubstance, but back in sort of the mid 80s. Appears to cause human illness in some circumstances. Again, that's, you know, there's no one's come out and said that, but there's several instances of scientists coming back from the Antarctic ill, British scientists being flown back with weird symptoms. There's the situation when the submarine standoff that we'll cover in a minute, that had situations where there was actually a radio transmission that was sent to this Paris embassy, where one of the sailors on board was doing a biotest and something happened to him. You've got to say that there's someone very clever pumping all this disinformation into the whole arena, or, you know, these things start tying up after a while. When it's activated, it sends signals, has some magnetic qualities. This is the one thing that none of us really know. Is it an oil or a goo, or, you know, it seems to be, it's not an oil, but it seems to use it as a medium, or it looks like that, and when it's in one of its forms. Because obviously if it's some sort of AI nano thing, then it perhaps can take on many forms. And that's the point to remember, that if the Falklands situation is true, then they've had from now, that's like, what, 2.5 decades, isn't it, that they've had to actually look into this. If you look at when the glut of the Marconi deaths happened, or even when it got back to Marconi, then what have they done with it since? You know, the British actually went down again to try and get some more, and they ran into trouble where their scientists, military, whoever went down with them, they apparently got ill again. This is what the South African guy told Alec Newell. So we come to the whole angle of this, that if we then decide, well, we've got this bizarre alien terraforming thing that's sat on the planet, and it seems that the geopolitical powers actually are in competition for some of this. They want to engineer it and use it for, advances to make money in corporations. There's some talk that's been used in some sort of health thing already, some sort of hospital machine. But so there's a big squabble over this stuff. But that's sort of ignoring the point that we have an issue that the ETs still didn't manage to de-engineer it. So they were warning us. They'd come down to the Thor base. They basically saying they'd been there since World War I on that crappy little island trying to safely de-engineer this oil that'd been left by another ET race. And essentially the threat is still there. And so what's going on with all this stuff with, we have Morgellons at the moment. And can I just ask how many people, if you just put a show of hands, have heard of the Morgellons disease? That's fascinating, because that's nearly everyone. So Morgellons has come down, and it's this, as you know, this weird thing that seems to have these nano robots that come out of people's skin, and it does seem that we've all got it, because you do this red wine spit test. It turns out that that probably most of us have got this latent form of it, and then in some people it seems to break out. And the people that have looked into this, then it's a hugely advanced thing. It seems to respond to frequencies. One Dutch scientist I got in touch with found out it had this thing called quorum sensing, which essentially means that they can actually, although they're all separate in this weird quantum way, they can all talk to each other. So you've got to sort of ask if there's a terraforming substance that's a threat on a planetary basis that's been sat there for millennia. What's going on now? The fact that this stuff seems to be down and sitting in our bodies waiting to do something. Is it the stuff of nightmares, or have we just got the wrong take on it? I don't know. This is what we're trying to find out. So I've just put some points down there on the whole idea of terraforming, and you get into this weird area. Why is it right now, if this stuff's been there, why is it right now that this ET group were making such a cry about having to de-engineer this stuff? And some people could say, well, is it down to drilling, the fact that we're starting to drill deeper, so if this stuff lies dormant, is that the danger? Is it that now we're such a state technologically that if we do find this stuff, by whatever means, we could militarize it? It's sort of significant that, of course, World War I technology, that's when they came to do it. Well, we were just starting to get mechanized then. Mechanization was just starting off, so perhaps if they've got an idea of the future patterns of how species work, then they could say, well, in 50 years' time they'll soon have silicon chips, and we've got to watch this stuff. I don't know. Or was it something to do with another alien race coming back? So the sort of symbolic culmination of this event, with when you've got Russia had been going down to the Antarctic for ages. This squabble between Argentina and Great Britain over this crappy little rock that's apparently got this stuff on. The culmination of this, and again, this was in Nexus magazine, and I spoke to Duncan, who runs Nexus magazine, and he is convinced. He sort of followed up all this and spoke to people. I think he flew to South Africa and spoke to someone. So he's pretty sure that the guy that wrote this document, that you can go and find on the website if you haven't already, that most of this is based on fact, that essentially it's about radio transmissions that went into some Paris embassy, and it was all to do with this standoff that was happening in the Gulf over these submarines. Of course, this bizarrely was at the same time that there was the Gulf oil spill that went on. Two things seem to be going on there. One, that some of them were after testing. Some of them were trying to test the substance that another submarine was down near the wellhead trying to put there. This is the gist that we get of it. So one French submarine was trying to get a sample of what another submarine, and believe me, they don't line up in east-west. It's a very strange mix when you read it. And what seems to be happening is that some rogue group were essentially trying to kick off some sort of terraforming activity down there, and some other people came in and tried to stop that and prevent that. And there was apparently sunk submarines, and of course some of these there are instances that just don't get onto news. There's many instances like that. So I can't go into that. Go and read on there. Suffice to say, go and read the document either in Nexus magazine, or it's on. You can get it on exopolitics.org UK if you find the place that covers this. But that's just a basic nod to say, well, has it gone that far to this planetary level where there are now squabbles and sunken boats and other stuff, diplomatic shenanigans, all sorts of stuff? that's the more details of that. So I mentioned this with the whole idea with this oil, that of course if it's got to that sort of level politically, perhaps it would sort of also mirror, it would mirror in the way, it would mirror in other ways in the fact that of course it gets, as we said, into culture. So we have the X-Files and stuff, and we have now other programs. There's one called Helix that's actually I haven't seen, but has actually come up and deals very much in the same way to do with this whole idea of going to a cold area, getting this black quote virus, and then how they deal with it, and the whole political stuff that kicks off to do with that. And you find then that the term black goo has then crept up on the internet, as we say. People are posting where they found it, how many films. I think someone had got 22 films that it's turned up in. So despite that, I don't think that just because something's merged into film, media and culture, that it doesn't mean it's not real. Because of course we have, I just listed a few random elements there. We have, you know, if we want to say, well, is this real? Apart from what we see on films and in culture, then we have all this stuff. We've got the Marconi desk that have got a link. And none of these may be direct, but I'm a firm believer in evidence you can build up in this sort of mosaic fashion, that things gradually point in a certain direction. You don't have to have this. And in the UFO field, you can't really have that. You can't, you can't, as Steve Bassett would say, you can't have the latrine from the saucer. You don't get it. You know, you've got to build up your argument in a sort of mosaic-ish sort of fashion. So that's just the point, that it may be in culture. That doesn't mean that it's you know, that's an easy get out to just say that that doesn't mean that it's actually not taking place in reality. And when you look into the issue, it has. And when you come down to the weirdest point, then I found this when I was looking, and I just typed black goo into Google and had a look. I'll see if I've got time to play the video. It was bizarre. If you know about Morgellons, I just mentioned that when you've got these nano, highly intelligent structures that are all inside you and occasionally crawl out of people and you know, put people into quite weird, strange, really quite sorrowful conditions, and probably have killed people, I should think, by now. It's a really distressing illness and bizarre as well. Apparently it has a very strange sort of emotional, mental side to it, which it would do if you got wires coming out of you. But of course the one way is you do this red wine spit test, and then they put that under microscopes, and you can see these little intelligent strands that are there, and they move around on their own. You know, this is nothing else. And the CDC in America won't even touch this stuff, so that tells you that it's sort of something they don't want to know anything about. So this lady has got Morgellons, and only recently she used something called a far infrared foot bath to try and deal with some of the symptoms of the itching from the Morgellons. And I think it's meant to sort of ease the symptoms and perhaps pull out these threads. People have used oil to try and pull these electric threads out of them, and she ended up, so imagine she's got a foot bath that's perhaps, I think it's like electrolysis or something that sends a frequency out. She says she's got something on your wrist. Obviously people are trying anything to try and deal with this thing at the moment. I don't blame them. And after one long session, you can watch the video for yourself, one long session, I think she said, she then put the water, you know, this either says she's got really dirty feet or something else is going on. So she put the water through a coffee filter and left it. That's been left for 3 days. And she's obviously using clean water, and this is the stuff. And when you watch the video, she turns it upside down, and lo and behold, it's this gooey paste. You know, if most of us put our feet into some water and probably put that machine on, I'm pretty sure most of us wouldn't get that, but she's a full Morgellons sufferer. So it was interesting that her title there was, you know, black oil, black goo, what on earth is it? So Morgellons people are now using this sort of language to basically ask questions about what's going on. I don't know. She didn't seem like, you know, I don't think this is particularly a subject to joke about on YouTube, so she seemed for real. I might try and have a talk to her when I get back. So essentially we're looking at a point of, if this terraforming situation is here, I mean, it's a big, you know, I put there, it's a bit of a mind warp to add. I mean, the whole ET UFO, the contact thing, sends people a bit weird anyway, you know, because it's a big thing to take on. You know, we're not covering the latest knitting pans when we look into this stuff. It's stuff that really, you know, this explains why the scene has so many strange people, but very, you know, sort of artistic, imaginative sort of people in it, and you know, it attracts a certain sort of person, and it's those that are sort of exploring, and it's beyond the bounds of most things, really, probably apart from some weird end of sort of quantum physics. So really, when I thought, if we've got to try and tackle this issue, because no one else is doing it. No one else is sort of looking, well, what if there are, what if we are at a situation where we've got competing ET races who have deposited high-tech things on the planet that could wipe us out? What if the military are trying to get hold of that stuff and do even more damage? And what if some people are some groups are trying to battle back against this? All this sort of mythological situation that seems to be happening. So it's like, well, what role can we then play about this, apart from just being observers to it all? Because we are, you can seem quite powerless with all this stuff. It's like a lot of stuff. It's like when you read all the conspiracy stuff and covert operations, David Icke's lizards, all this sort of stuff. You can think, my God, this is so mad, I can't do anything, or I don't want to do anything. And it's trying to think, well, it's trying to see what you can do to sort of perhaps engage with this, to understand it more and find a way to discuss it with people and whatever else. That's the point we're trying to get to with the whole idea of terraforming. And I just made some points there that the idea is that you can't any longer, I don't think, use UFO research on its own. So the whole idea of sort of, looking at a UFO and deciding who, which group of aliens are in it, or all this sort of stuff. It's trying to broaden things out a bit. We've done all that for a few decades. So it's trying to bring in other areas. And I've always said this with exopolitics, which is the reason why that area attracted me, because it seemed to bring in other, as well as the political thing, it brought in other, or allowed you to bring in other areas. And that's important for us to lose this tag of us being this cliquey anorak community, so we bring other things, because the alien issue is going to start to come to the center of world events. It's just that's how it's going to be. If we're going to move off this planet, that's what's going to happen. We're already seeing that now, both with the contact thing in films, the fact that the Russian president started saying that he got a book on the ET issue. That seems to be real. Medvedev gets a book on what to do if how many alien bases are in Russia. That got out off microphone and stuff. So this stuff's now starting to creep out, and we can't shy away from these other bigger issues to do with this sort of thing. We need people to sort of discuss and perhaps examine these things. So I'll just put that. It puts it. I'll put on the next slide as well. It puts a bit of a complex sort of sheen on the whole issue of even of evolution, and we struggle enough as it is with the ET issue. Sorry, I think I swore there when I was writing that. Adding the basic findings of the Goo results in coming to terms with, it means coming to terms with a cosmic mindfuck that goes beyond anything contemplated by mainstream culture. So that's the point I was just trying to make, that we're sort of out on our own here with that, because the problem is because it's related to ETs, unless it gets framed in a way of perhaps, say, geology, there's this substance underground, geology, and then perhaps then you get science in on it, but eventually you come to the fact that all this is probably an ET-related substance, then it's not going to be approached by mainstream culture. It also makes the whole debate about creationism and evolution look completely outmoded, because what's this discussion between sort of God or whether we evolved on the planet? My God, if you add on top of that the fact that there are competing races of ETs that are depositing stuff, then on top of that you've got this deep political layer of rogue intelligence agencies that are all squabbling over it. This is beyond what most people will touch, but we can't leave it that way. We have to keep hammering away at this sort of stuff. And really, as with many things, I've thought, which is why most of us keep coming back to this area, the whole UFO and the exopolitics paradigm, it's the only viable way that this stuff can be discussed. You won't find another way to do it. You try and find another. You try and do it through contemporary sociology, politics, biology. None of these things in isolation will help us understand this stuff. So we need to get this field out, open, so it's accepted, so you can discuss the whole ET issue. And this is what everyone here is doing, and it's just trying to push on with that. And I don't know if time's short in what's going on. There are some signs that, we've had the whole 2012 thing, but I always thought that was a bit hypey, and I think the main menu item is shortly round the corner in whatever way. Interestingly, related to that, Alec Newell has had some new, not so much new information, but his as with when you read contact accounts, as Mary also said, I was talking to Mary just before I came in, there are different ways of delivering information, and perhaps the very issue that we've just had with trying to discuss, well, how on earth do we get people to understand this whole idea that there could be competing alien races putting this nanotech on the planet, all the stuff that goes with it, how do we get that over to people? And maybe it's because we're coming to a point now where when you start involving the ET alien issue, it can't sort of be discussed in normal terms. That's why a lot of people are sort of put off it, to be honest. It's difficult to discuss. There isn't a language to do it. So what you then find, of course, with contactees, this has come up since the 50s. If you go back and read, if you're a bit of a contactee literature bore like I am, and you go out and read the 50s contactee literature, you'll find that they're constantly using gadgets to send people visual information, symbols. That's the same thing now. It's people are getting sent images in the head. The contactees are being trained on board craft and having images sent to them, and then understanding hugely complex, just like Mary was covering, hugely complex bits of data. And that's where we're all going. I've put at the bottom there. We all have this ability, and some of this happens when you go out and you do this CE5 stuff. You try and do this contact. When one of those lights shines at you, or even if you don't see anything, you start getting twinges, and you will start getting colours in front of your eyes. Things will start happening. And I think this is sort of genetically that all of us are now, from maybe energy from UFOs, energy from the planet, I don't know, just general DNA that's being sort of, we've got a thing called histone on our DNA that covers up this whole supposed junk DNA. And the whole idea that when this unpeels, you start being able to access, the RNA can then access these other parts of this DNA. And then, of course, this junk DNA then perhaps starts revealing stuff. I'm pretty sure that one of those is this. Miles takes the piss out of me for using the word hyper, but it's a hyper language. It just means everything. It's an everything language. It's a high bandwidth medium that allows you to discuss really complex things that probably can't be discussed in linear linguistic format. The important thing with regard to Alec Newald is that the information for him has always been timed, and you'll find that with a lot of contactees. It's timed in the way it's delivered. When he was in prison in South Africa, the intelligence agent came up to him and had got it wasn't a coin, it was an artifact off a ship that had crashed in the Kalahari Desert, and the ship was related to these ETs. It's actually the ship that had escaped, this seems a long series of events, the ship that had escaped from the Falklands flew and got shot down over the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. The intelligence agent brought this gadget in, this trinket from the ship, and as he handed it to Alex, he got this sort of download, this visual download of information, and in front of this guy in prison. And this seems to happen to a lot of contactees, either through artifacts. The same happened to Rendlesham when Jim Peddiston touched the thing, didn't he? He got this download. This happens a lot. And the other point he's made is that he's come out with some different stuff now because contact wasn't sufficiently taking place back then. And by contact, I don't think he means sort of government contact. He meant how receptive are we to the idea of contact? And even within the UFO community, I go back 5-10 years, and if you discussed contact within the mainstream UFO community, you were seen as a kooky sideliner. And I think part of that's the problem that that if we're already covering an area, if we're discussing documents, freedom of information, and all the good stuff, the sensible stuff of ufology, then contact's seen as the wacky stuff. But that's changing, and a lot of that's changing because people are starting to have their own sightings. YouTube's around, you can flick it on, you can see very convincing stuff on YouTube. So the important point is about if we're all developing this language, then can we start dealing with things like contact out in fields on Knap Hill and start getting messages? Can we also then get important downloads that may help us deal with situations, even just personally, how to deal with situations like nightmarish sci-fi black goo that's going to come in to eat us up in the most horrific way? Maybe there's some way that all this will start dealing with that. But have just watched. This is... if Julie's here from Australia, I want to say thank you because she gave me a DVD from Nexus, which actually led me to this. And this is one of the best. Actually, this is one of the best bits of it. So this is Alec describing his time on the craft. The language after he got. You'll see it anyway. I'll shut up.
We seem to have adopted, even though my body looked to be similar. I was 40 years of age at that stage. Similar body structure to what I'd had prior to the crash in the car. But it was now blue. And it was explained to me that with the blue body came an ability to interact. A communication device was built into the body, if you like. And that language was like something you could not imagine on this planet. There were no real words as such. We had a colour which was accompanied by a resonance, but the resonance was more like a song. They were singing to me in colour. And because all of this was internal, this was telepathic, obviously, even though I had never experienced it before to my memory, and I didn't realise what telepathy would be like, of course. I don't think many of us really do when it's full-blown. And accompanying these songs, these rhythms, these harmonic wavelengths, followed by the colour, which was just flowing through my head, were images. And because this was being deciphered for me automatically, it was just like speaking to you now or you speaking to me. I would know what you were saying automatically. I didn't have to interpret it. It was naturally. It looks and sounds to be so confusing to have colours in your head and vibrations in your head and pictures in your head, but along with that experience, they could download so much information so quickly, and it was all perfectly natural.
Fascinating part of the book when he goes through this whole process. So Alec currently, spoke to him the last couple of days, has got a UFO outside of his bathroom window, and it's sat there, and he's been having strange dreams. Again, dreams is another thing. Another thing that happens actually when if you people have contact, or even if you go out to these fields and you get these bright lights around, you'll have like a series of days with sort of 3 nights of dreams. But weirdly, I'm the sort of person who never dreams. 3 consecutive dreams that are sort of in a row and that seem to follow on. So he's waking up having dreams, but then seems to have. It's more about having recovered stuff that you already knew, which also sort of makes sense. So he's then been starting to say that he thinks people are a little bit more receptive now with the way that contact is actually being dealt with, and the whole thing is being discussed. And interestingly, of course, so if you start looking at things from the whole idea that, well, we've got this Morgellons, which seems to be this sort of nano, very artificial cold substance that caused all these deaths in the Marconi industry, caused all these greedy governments and the military to go and squabble over picking this up. So quite a negative sort of thing associated with it. That basically he's suggesting that there could well be a different way of dealing with this, and the fact that he discovered that while he was on the planet, the one thing that and he writes this in his book, but he said it's come forward far more since. I'll move quickly forward to this bit that on this slide, that he found that everything, when he got to this is the planet that he got taken to for 10 days, disappeared. He went on holiday for the first time as a bachelor, just split up with his wife and his kids. The first time in the whole life that no one would know where he was. He disappeared for 10 days. I went to this planet, and everything, I think that's the house there, everything he noticed, you get this talk about organic craft on when you read UFO accounts and stuff, the whole idea that these things had both sort of some form of telepathy or intelligence, but also were made of what seemed to be some sort of organic matter. People talk about UFOs breathing, don't they? It's like the UFOs, they seem to breathe or talk to me or this sort of stuff. Well, amazingly, these seem to be, despite living in a desert, this is a desert planet that they seem to have terraformed very efficiently. These are energy towers that they apparently keeps the place stable. They're pulling energy in from Earth or cosmos, I don't know where. But even these houses were made of entwined neural plant-like material. So you get this sort of mix between the two, that the whole idea that we've got these sort of neural nets in psychology. If you look at those, the same thing as that like brain matter is made out of, these highly complex sort of structures that sort of can gradually learn. And that he said that the house, you could go in there and it would know if you needed to be hot or cold, or if you needed more light, you just needed to think. It sounds great, doesn't it? You need to you want a bit more light on, it would turn it on. You want to be a bit cooler, it would turn the temperature down a bit. So all this sort of stuff, the little vehicle, the little weirdo Star Wars sci-fi thing that he drove around in was also made of this intertwined sort of plant material, and in fact so were the beings that he met. Also are from a plant, and he was saying to me on the when we were talking on Skype, he's saying, it sounds a bit weird because of course we think of advancement and aliens and alien technology, and we think of things like silicon, or that it's just somewhere way it's not going to be. We see nature as perhaps somewhat backward in a way, but it sort of makes sense actually. It's the other way around, that you get this mix of ultra high tech. This whole idea with the when they found the Roswell craft, that they found that lo and behold the pilot didn't have a steering wheel. In fact, he plugged himself into something from his drone's mind, and then it controlled where the craft go. And this, this seems to be the case with these vehicles. So again, you find a way of mixing really high-tech stuff with what they call the wetware of the brain, and that of course would include the fact that we've come through an evolutionary process that is also made of plants. And the beings that he met were also plant-based, so they told him they were plant-based. Even this rather good-looking one here, who he had a little snog with on a rock when he was there, that's Xena. And yet when he got back to Earth, it was a little bit different, because unfortunately then she looked a bit like that, but equally beautiful, I would say, in their own way. So that was Xena, who actually apparently is in some form back on the planet in I don't know, I should say that, in Italy at the moment. So let me just go back to the previous one. Yeah, I mentioned that. So advanced tech is different to the world of biology or the natural world. I'm trying to get to the point that we can. A lot of the stuff to do with this nightmare sort of things to do with Morgellons, or this whole idea of this oil, then it's just sort of the whole idea of not to let it overwhelm you, and to try and get to a position. Some people like that. There's a whole part of the UFO scene that likes the whole idea of conspiracy governments and the whole idea that we're all sort of doomed in a way. But it doesn't really do us any good to keep adopting those sort of views. So I put that actually, when you look at like ET tech and stuff, and you look at our planet, or you look at the evolutionary path that we've had, then the symbiosis, or the joining of the two, would be a mix between this sort of biology and maybe a high-tech solution as well. It involves these sort of advanced neural net stuff that that come on these spaceships that come to visit us. Skip that one. Yeah, okay. So I was just going to sum up, and then if you want to have any questions, I've got about 5 minutes left. So I put that. So is there a multifaceted sort of terror struggle, a struggle for the Earth taking place where, we've got this whole issue regarding biology and plants and things? Because, we know that sort of the Earth always fights back after, we know that there's probably been civilizations here before us. Well, the Earth sort of recovered previously. This whole idea of terraforming seems to go in a good way or a bad way, but the Earth seems to always recover. Mars seems to have been through a different thing as well, this whole sort of terraform thing, whether that's from a comet that then finished it off, but they're a very barren place, but probably at once was very much like the Earth, it seems. And then we've got this whole idea that this sort of standoff with this substance X, or the black goo, and pollution, and that to me, is not wanting to wax sort of philosophical here, but this stuff seems to represent, it's us. We've got an addiction to certain things. We're addicted to materials, and by that I don't mean going to pound stretch. I just mean we're addicted to being in the material world and what that involves. We're not as keen on sort of spirit and other sorts of things. So is it about shifting that balance? And it seems that that's what these ETs were doing, as well as attempting to de-engineer this, that they have a plan, or a plan is in place to deal with the threat of this dark force, this substance X, and actually deal with it by getting a super intelligent plant form in place in the oceans. That seems to be the crucial part, that then dominates, because the cycle, isn't it, of how oceans then dominate the rest of the land. That seems to be one of their strategies. So I'm just going to sum up, and then essentially just made those points. I'll just read these out. So the whole point, we started off with a bit of C5 and the fact that, like, any of you now, if you want to right now after this, can go up to Knap Hill and do a mini meditation, think of a saucer in your head, send it zapping out to the universe, that's what I do, and then see what turns up. And so we can all do this, and then, what sort of that, the point is you can, and you will find, and maybe it might take a year, might make 2 or 3 years, but you'll find that you can interact with these objects, and hence you are interacting with your environments. You don't have to just go to Pound Stretcher and buy a Mars bar. That's not really interacting with your environment. It is, but it's pretty boring. If you want to do something a bit more interesting, you can do that. Just the same with crop circles. The people have found that they have interactions with crop circles. Busty have a very strange interaction with a crop circle where he got blown backwards or something. So all these sort of things, and when these things happen to us, they're profound. They're really profound things that happen. And I think this is part of gearing up for all this stuff. So all this transition's on the horizon. There's all this stuff cropping up. There's the internet's getting obsessed with black goo, and the film's getting obsessed with black goo. All this stuff. But if we can go and do this own stuff that involves elevating ourselves a bit, having these experiences directly, you don't need the government to go out there and see a source. You don't need a freedom of information document to say that sources exist when you go out and experience these craft. It can be done. The same thing with meditation and going to crop circles, all this sort of stuff. And the whole notion is to merge the alien into your wider reality. That's what most of us are probably doing here. Even if we don't like the term alien, then that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring something different into this godforsaken planet where it seems to be in control by a load of fucking nutcases. So it's trying to bring that into your reality a little bit. And I put that terraforming, because I'm a bit bored with people on the internet who just, it's do and it's this, and every time you say something positive, it's like, no, God, no, that's not happening. What if the government get you? It's just, so it's like, don't buy all the conspiracy stuff. Reality can be engineered. I was reading a contact book recently that there's someone's developing it's not a new Tesla, but there's a Tesla device that's being done by this lady in America, and she's been getting this guidance on building this Tesla device. And apparently Tesla actually appeared to her, some form of Tesla, and they'd finished making it. This is a true story. And she said to Tesla, well, what if what if we put it out? He said, get it out there. She says, well, what if we start to put it out and it gets into the wrong hands? He goes, we will re-engineer your world, so not only will you not have had it, you will not, and you won't even remember that you haven't had it. And he said you won't get it again for another 100 years. And someone said that I read something else in ContActiVism, the same about the nuclear issue. That if we let a nuclear bomb off for global destruction, then they'll re-engineer it so that actually we had no concept. We wouldn't even come across the whole idea of nuclear fission in the first place. And I think things can work like that with this federation of all-powerful ETs. So these individual groups of ETs may not be able to change our destiny, but certain groups of them can probably do that. So we don't know enough to be afraid and scared and doomsayers about this stuff. And it's just bearing in mind that the blue ETs were de-engineering this Promethean substance, I've called it. Prometheus is the one film that seemed to really concentrate on just what this is about. Someone's just said that. I mean, it's an amazing film and goes into this whole notion of genetically rewriting the species and rewriting the planet. But remember, they were de-engineering. They weren't putting it together. They were trying to help us with what they were doing. And the same with the Gulf of Mexico. Then they were, if that's true, they were trying to put something. They were trying to start off a terraforming reaction, and it didn't work. They got caught out. So we have support in profound ways, but only if we want to actually engage with that. And with that, I'll leave you with a light from last night for you to look at, and that's me done.
Well done, Gary. We can have another few minutes break. There's some food left out there. Okay.